Hello, everyone. My name is Jesslyn Burgess, and I will be the moderator for GPRI's intro webinar, Leaning Forward Best Practices for a Successful Professional Career. As we wait for others, let me walk you through what GPRI is for those of you who may not know. It is my pleasure to introduce to GPRI. GPRI is a privately owned online gamified education platform with a mission to make sustainability resources available for everyone across the globe. We are located in New York City and with presence around the world. We are a USGPC education partner, AI education provider, and education partners for various other organizations you see on the screen here, including the UN SDGs, Collaborative for High Performance Schools, and the State of Rhode Island's Energy Efficiency Council. With hundreds of sustainability courses surrounding the topics of energy, water, lead, net zero, we are one of the largest education providers in the world in terms of sustainability, with more than 400 courses and more than 100,000 students around the world since 2010. We would like to call ourselves the premier sustainability education provider in the world. We have also partnered with the world's largest Project Controls Expo that gives you free access to hundreds of courses on project controls by experts. With that, let me get started with our program today. Thank you once again for joining us today. Leaning Forward Best Practices for a Successful Professional Career is GBRI's mentorship program series developed and delivered by our very own Executive Director, Michael Citalida. The Leaning Forward program consists of 5 modules and is offered in 3 tiers. Level 1 for entry-level to 10 years experience, Tier 2 mid-level managers, and Tier 3 C-level executives. This program will cover that every AEC professional needs to know to be successful, grow professionally, and advance in their career. This is an introductory session where Mike himself will be introducing us to the program that he has designed to participants like you and me on a track to being ready for opportunities the world presents. Mike is a career program construction management executive with more than 40 years of experience in federal, state, and local government projects, managing military, school, and transportation projects. He has a track record of organizing, leading, and managing teams to execute projects with favorable success. I had the personal privilege to work with Mike's leadership on the East Side Access Program, which is one of the largest infrastructure projects in the world. Mike is a professional engineer, a lead AP with operations and maintenance specialty, and a proud GPRI climate change ambassador. Mike, thank you for joining us today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jesslyn. Let me just how's that, everyone? Good. All right, very good. Thank you, Jesslyn. I appreciate that generous introduction. Hi, everyone. Thanks for signing on today. If today's group is anything like previous groups that I've been affiliated with GBRI, I'm willing to bet that you have signed on from all over the globe, and we're delighted that you could find the time in your schedule to join us today. As Jesslyn said, I put this program together, actually did it during my final years in public sector employment, and I've presented it to staff, both from the public sector as well as private sector, to undergraduate and graduate students at CUNY and Cooper Union. This program is entirely based on my experience. You're not going to find anything that I'm talking about that comes out of a text book. I've learned as much from my mentors as from those that I mentor. And it's been a great experience, and I'm here to share that experience with each of you. As Jeslyn mentioned, over 40 years in the industry, 30 years of public sector experience, and 10 years in the private sector. I've worked on the largest project in North America, the East Side Access Project, right down to some of the smallest projects in the region, including the addition to PS 47 in Broad Channel, Queens, some years ago, and frankly, everything in between. I've been a field engineer, a design manager, a project manager, and a program executive. But on top of it all, a mentor. And I'd like to dedicate this program series to Joe Stewart, who was my mentor and someone who helped me navigate my way through at least 3 positions that I've had in my career. So today's agenda, we've essentially gone through the introduction. I'm going to talk about the timeliness of the program with respect to your careers. I'll go into each of the 5 program modules, and then we'll talk about the next steps. So there are literally hundreds of topics that can be discussed with any mentor with their proteges, mentees, if you will. You can see some of those on the screen here today. What I've decided to do, though, is follow the 80-20 rule. I believe that by covering a small fraction, maybe 20%, thereabouts, you should walk away with 80% of what you need. You may have specific needs that go beyond that, and perhaps I can help you follow those leads as well. So the program that I've put together really focuses on 25 topics over 5 modules. So why is this important at this point? As you can well expect, someone with 40 years experience is part of the baby boomer generation. And the one thing that you should all know about baby boomers is within the next, call it 5 years, the vast majority of us will have left full-time employment and opened up opportunities for future generations to fill those slots. As this slide shows, the number of people that followed the baby boomers in general has been at a lower level and a lower rate, which means as baby boomers like myself leave the market, there are going to be plenty of opportunities for the generations that follow. In fact, in 5 years, Generation X people are going to begin to retire, opening up even more opportunities for millennials and Generation X people. So the question that I have for you is, will you be ready to take on those new opportunities, those new challenges as you embark on your career? The Leaning Forward program is designed to help you compete and succeed in those opportunities. And by taking this first step of coming out today and hearing what the program is all about, you're in fact following one of the recommendations that's contained in the program herein. So as Jeslyn mentioned, and I reiterated, I've broken this down into 5 focused modules. The first one is establishing your foundation. Now, this is not only for entry level, or call it 0 through 5, but this is also for individuals who find themselves in a new position, find themselves having changed careers, or simply want to do a reset with where they are and perhaps start off in a different direction, or a greatly enhanced direction in the position that they're currently holding. The next one is self-evaluation and development, Module 2. The next one is communications. And frankly, if there was only one topic for me to discuss with anyone who's interested in best practices and advancing in their career, it would be communications, which is why I've devoted an entire module to this topic. Number 4 is advanced topics, and we'll go into the details in a moment. And the last one is what to know before you become a manager. This one was created based on multiple requests from people in the 0 to 10 year experience band, individuals who are absolutely looking for opportunities to join the ranks of supervisors and managers. And they asked me to put together a presentation that kind of guides them on how to be ready for those assignments. So Module 1, establishing your foundation. The core topic here is ethics and integrity. I've given this program before in a live setting, and one of the most common feedbacks that I received was about me addressing ethics and integrity up front. People have told me that in the past, when they've taken programs such as this, ethics and integrity is relegated to perhaps the last topic in a presentation. And oftentimes at a time when folks aren't as focused as they may have been early on, and in fact, time is running out. Well, I look at ethics and integrity somewhat differently. Ethics and integrity need to be discussed up front. Ethics and integrity needs to be practiced first and foremost. And if ethics and integrity aren't embraced, then frankly, the whole rest of the program is moot. For anyone who's cheating their way through their career, you need to go no farther. That's why I begin with ethics and integrity. And I'll go into the specifics as to why ethics and integrity is important in our industry. I'm assuming that the group today is represented by architects and engineers and a lot of folks on the technical side, but frankly applies to anyone who's in business. I'm going to cover a culture of learning. Raise your hand if you were excited about the notion of graduating from college and putting the books behind you and the tests behind you and the like. I certainly was. And you know what? One of the first things that I did was sign up to pursue my MBA. And I had a good reason for doing that. That's one of the things I'm going to talk about in terms of a culture of learning. And it goes well beyond an advanced degree. And everyone needs to know and understand and follow that. The third principal topic in this segment is teamwork. And boy, talk about an overused word. All right, what's he going to tell us about the teamwork that we don't already know? Well, I think those of us in the construction industry, design, construction, know that gone are the days where a single architect or a single engineer through sheer will or force of will is able to do everything on their own. Everything that we do today involves teams, and not only online, in person as well. And I'm going to talk about the importance of forming a team, who the team members are, team leadership, and the like. We're going to go down into a little bit more detail than, hey, let's do one for the team. The next topic in this module is initiative and visibility. As I mentioned earlier, the mere fact that you've logged on today and you decided to join this presentation shows initiative. I talk in great detail about just how best to show initiative and be visible wherever you are in your career in order to prepare yourself for what's to come. And then finally, work-life balance. So the good news is, here in the United States, we're among the most productive countries on the planet. The bad news is that that's at the expense of an appropriate work-life balance. And I'm going to talk specifics about why that's important and how an appropriate balance is better than attempting to work through illnesses, vacations, etc. For those of you who follow football, you all know the last day of the Premier League, every team plays at the same time. If you've ever watched those games, it's quite evident that many of those players are not at their peak. And we all know why. Some of them are playing as many as 60 games or more in a season. And when you put on top of that international duty, you know, these folks don't get much of a break, and it really shows at the end of the season. Well, the same thing is true for us professionals. And if we overdo it, we're going to have lackluster performances similar to what we see on the pitch. Module 2, self-assessment and development. My core topic here is continuous improvement. We've all taken steps to get to where we are today. And the steps necessary to go beyond are going to require a degree of continuous improvement, again, that goes beyond mere continuing education or advanced degrees. There are many other ways to focus on continuously improving. And I've got some methodologies that I've personally followed and I recommend to folks to put them in a better position to take that next step. For those of you in a technical career field, we all know how important it is for us to problem solve and to crunch numbers and to use logic and the like. It's all that kind of thinking. But let's not forget about emotional intelligence and social intelligence. Some people call it soft skills. Well, I can tell you they're every bit as important as those hard technical skills that we all honed during school and during our career. And you'll have the edge if you can maximize your intelligence from an emotional and a social standpoint. Credentialing. Again, I come from the AEC industry, and let me assure you that credentialing is quite important. And I'm going to talk about the specifics as to what kind of credentials to pursue and why, and what it's going to do, and what it's not going to do if you don't have credentials. And finally, board of advisors. I'm here to say you all need them. Every one of us needs a board of advisors. Oh, it's an unpaid position. Don't think it's a board of directors or anything like that. And some of you probably employ this technique already. Each of us needs to be surrounded by confidants. I like to say board of advisors, people that we trust. I'm going to talk about, with that relationship, what you owe your board and what they owe you. It's very important in terms of your ability to move up in your careers. Back to communications, my absolute favorite topic of all. The core is going to be about public speaking. And whether that's to an auditorium full of people or a classroom size, whether you're speaking to a group of customers, the general public, perhaps parents at a school, whatever the case may be, public speaking is vital to our success. You may have the best ideas from a technical standpoint, but if you're not able to communicate those ideas, you're not going to get a lot of people interested in the good ideas that you have. Now, I'm going to talk about the specific things that I've done over my career to put myself in a position. And frankly, there are times I'm more comfortable in a public speaking role than a one-on-one role. That's how comfortable I am in that arena. I'll talk a little bit about the written communications, maybe some things that you're not aware of, things that you haven't followed. Just want to make sure that everyone understands it's a dual communication track, oral communication, written communication. And finally, I'm going to talk about meeting management and facilitation skills. I'm sure each of you have been to a meeting and have concluded this is not as productive as it should have been. Well, why is that? What are the things that we can do in order to ensure time spent in meetings is in fact productive? And of course, we're all even further challenged by the fact that many of the meetings that we now attend are virtual. And that brings about a whole different set of challenges. But I've got some techniques on ways to ensure that either setting, in person or virtual, you can equally be successful in managing your meetings. And facilitation skills, unlike chairing a meeting, at least the cases that I've been affiliated with, when I chair a meeting, I usually have a stake in the outcome. What I'm going to talk about in terms of facilitation skills is I'm responsible for facilitating the conversation. I don't necessarily have a stake in the outcome, and how you need to change your approach when you no longer have a stake, yet you have a responsibility to make sure that two parties get what they need from your facilitation efforts. So advanced content, some of the things that I'm going to talk about. The core topic is customers. And of course, being in business or being in the AEC industry, whatever the case may be, it's all about customers. The tack that I'm going to take on this one, though, is that not only do each of us have customers, but in some cases, we are the customer. And what are the expectations as a customer? And how are we best going to be served by those who treat us as customers? And that's why it's a core topic, because at the end of the day, I think that's what it's all about. Feedback and lessons learned. Now, 2 years ago, I joined the Moynihan Train Hall team here in New York City. They were charged with converting the iconic Farley Post Office into a train hall for Amtrak and Long Island Railroad. And I was amazed at just how much I learned in a little bit over a year of being affiliated with that project team. And so many of the things that they've done, or they did, are things that I wish I'd known about earlier on in my career. And so many of the things that they've done are things that I will take with me and I will share with others. And that's going to come out in the presentation. Because the bottom line is, for those of us in the AEC industry, we've not mastered completely how to execute projects on time and within budget consistently across industries, geographic locations, etc. And we all need to rely on lessons learned in order to improve that performance. And for me, Moynihan Train Hall is one of the best examples of a project that I've ever worked on. And I will be sharing those lessons learned for as long as I'm talking about lessons learned. The next topic is value-added proposition. The simple question to you is, what is your value-added proposition? What is it that you offer a team or a project or a company or a partner? And you need to think about that. And finally, risk management. I got really introduced to risk management about 10 years ago. It was being embraced by the MTA here in New York in a big way. And I learned that large project or small, having a risk management program is absolutely essential towards the success of that project. And I'm going to talk about the specifics of that. And frankly, I think it goes beyond projects as well. Identify what might prevent us from being successful, and then take mitigation measures. Frankly, you could argue that the same is true with our individual careers. And finally, the final module, number 5, what to know before becoming a manager. As I said, this one was developed based on input from pretty reliable group of folks, all who had the same interest of being ready once they're tapped for a supervisory role in their career. When becoming a supervisor isn't something that you want to do cold. You want to know more than what you've witnessed from your supervisor or supervisors. In fact, the argument can be made that your approach needs to be different than what your supervisor's approach was. And I'm going to explain why. I've had many supervisors and have had great difficulty in emulating them. And they were successful. I took a different path, and I'm successful. So I'm going to talk about how to best prepare yourself for that new role. The core topic, of course, is leadership. And there's a lot of overlap between everything that I've covered to this point and leadership. Leadership is about initiative, communications, visibility, emotional intelligence, a lot of what's already been discussed. That's all going to get wrapped up so you have a better understanding as how to be a leader in a position of supervisory or manager. Job knowledge. Now, why would I need to talk about job knowledge? Because the skills that you have that got you to the point of becoming a manager are not the same skills that you're going to need in order to succeed as a manager. And I've seen people who have done exceptional jobs at the project manager level, but then in the supervisory level, they learned pretty quickly that those same skills didn't work for them. And the other thing is that you need to shed some of that. Remember, when you're the supervisor, there's a whole, presumably there's a team of people that are supporting you. So how are you going to get the best from them without doing the work? like you used to. And then, of course, management and organizational skills. That's pretty straightforward. I don't think I need to say much there. Judgment and decisions. I'm always reminded of Harry Truman when he became president. And sorry, I wasn't around, but I've seen pictures and I've read about President Truman. But he put a sign right on his desk, "The buck stops here." Well, that's something I'm going to talk about in this module, that wherever you are as a manager, to some degree, the buck stops with you. Whereas as a team member, as an employee, that's usually not the case. And your judgments and your decisions are going to go a long way to ensuring that anything that needs to take place at that point, you're in good hands. And then I'm going to talk about diversity. And I'm not going to talk about it from a social standpoint. I'm not going to talk about it from a goals standpoint. I'm going to talk about it from a completely different standpoint. I'm going to talk about it from the standpoint of I'm a 10-year-old kid and I'm choosing sides for a baseball team and how I approach that. And you know what? The same thing holds true for how I put together a team during my career. So that's the angle that I'm going to take in that regard. And I'm going to demonstrate to the group that that's the way to go. Okay, folks, that's a quick intro, if you will. A little shy of 30 minutes, just to give everyone a sense as to the program and what I plan on covering. Some of the material may be familiar. Some of the material is bound to be new. And I find that many people view this as an impetus or a catalyst, if you will, for getting their careers back on track. I hope you'll join me as we roll out the full program beginning next month. I'm going to turn it back to Jeslyn to talk about registration and what's coming up from GBRI. Thanks again, everyone, for joining me today.
Thank you, Mike. I'm going to share my screen now. Thank you, Mike. That was incredible. You know, you just introducing us to two topics itself was enlightening. As you mentioned, some of those topics, just the topics itself, we may be familiar with the names, but the way you presented it actually makes it much more insightful. It makes us think that, oh, I would love to be part of the program. As much as I've learned from you in the last few years, I would be definitely signing up for the program myself. I believe, just like you mentioned, the demand for experienced and qualified professionals in the AEC industry, it is expanding quicker than any time in the past 60 years. Over the next 10 years, as you mentioned, the baby boomer generation in the US will have largely left full-time employment status, which would result in significant opportunities for younger professionals to advance in their careers. So my question to everyone who has joined today is, are you all ready? And what is the next step for that? So I personally would like to invite you all to sign up for the program. I don't know if you can see my, let's see if on my screen, there should be a link. Let's see it here. So what we have done is, can you guys see the screen with the program? Yeah, okay, all right. So this is as Mike mentioned, it's a 5 modules. We thought of setting up the 5 modules as standalone 5 modules, each module for $99. But you also have an option to get the entire series for $399. In fact, we are hoping that the first module, maybe in July or August, we can do as a test run because Mike has been. First of all, I would like to say a huge thank you to Mike for creating this program. Just like how Mike mentioned, this is his life experience. It is not from any textbooks. So that itself makes it very personal for someone who is in the AEC industry in New York City. And knowing Mike the last few years, I can almost assure that the quality of the program. So those of you who are interested, please feel free to sign up now. Felicia is going to share the link in the chat. And if you have any questions, you can ask now. We will be, I think right now as we speak, planning to host this in July/August. And if there is a lot of demand, we hopefully will have Mike do this every other month if he is free and available. And as Mike mentioned, he may do the next tier too. This would be the first tier, then the next tier, and then finally the C-level executives. So hopefully we get the best out of Mike as he is preparing this series for GBRI and for everyone around the world. So on behalf of GBRI, once again, I want to thank Mike for his help in this. And let me take some questions on the air now. So there is one about the presentation itself. If we can share this presentation, I would love to say yes, but I would have to also check with Mike today because he has put some effort definitely to prepare this presentation itself. I hope he will be okay with it, but we'll check with him and we will make a necessary arrangement to share this.
Yes, of course, Jess. Yes.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for letting us share it. So Sarah, the answer is yes. You will definitely get the presentation by the end of the session today. You'll also have on-demand access to the recording, and we will provide you to the link to the handout of the presentation itself. Any other questions? This is in fact the first time we are offering a program like this. In the past, we have always have sessions on sustainability, lead exam prep, dual exam prep, and things like that. In fact, this is a program which I personally believe would benefit not just the AEC industry, but also everyone out there who are planning or at least have the appetite to grow. I personally think I would consider myself as a lifelong learner. Every day you learn something new, and if we keep ourselves open, then there is no end to it. Thank you, Felicia, for sharing the link in the chat. All right, that's it. Looks like there's no more questions. So, Mike, I had a question. Since I will actually hope this would help others also to ask these questions. So, when was the first time you thought about the need for a program like this? Because I know that I was part of one of your sessions in Eastside Access, and I wonder, when you started working with younger generations, did you realize there was a huge gap, and is that what gave you the inspiration to start this program?
Yes. So, to be perfectly frank, Jess, I thought about this about 10 years ago. I was working on Eastside Access, and the one thing that I realized is that there was a tremendous age gap between myself and the average age of the team. And I thought to myself, at some point, I'm going to be retiring and doing something else in my career. But there's a lot of individuals who are hungry and have initiative and want to improve and get the edge and be prepared, etc. And I thought, what better time in my career to kind of sum things up and share that with others. And I think that was really from a more organized approach, if you will, because I've been actively mentoring individuals for many years. But this was an opportunity to kind of put all of that on paper, if you will, and in a format that I can then use to share it with a wide group of folks. And as you know, it was always a packed house over in the Queens area office when I was, covering these topics because people are interested. So I was delighted when we hooked up through GBRI to have an opportunity to now share this with a much wider group of folks. And just so the group knows, for those of you who sign up, I'll be as interested in hearing your feedback as I'm sure you are in hearing what I have to say. Because frankly, I'm not done learning. I'm not done in improving upon things that I believe I do pretty well in. It's a continuous process, and here I am still continuously improving.
Thank you for sharing that, Mike. We have a couple of questions here. So one is, any interesting lessons learned to share? This is from Chris Palika. Do you
yeah. Sure. Hi, Chris. Chris and I worked together on Moynihan, so I'm glad he had an opportunity to join. He's one of many of the younger folks who worked on that project tirelessly to open on time at the end of 2020. Chris, the biggest lesson learned from that project is the 90-day interim substantial completion date for key railroad systems. So as we all know, in construction, when you put a contract together, you create a duration. That's a period of performance for a contractor to complete all of the work. And when they achieve substantial completion, which is equivalent to being able to use the facility as it was intended, that really defines the end of the work, except for punch list and things like that. Well, someone at Moynihan on the team came up with a brilliant idea to create milestones for key railroad systems that were 90 days before all of the work needed to be done. And that's such a great idea because any of you who have been involved with railroad systems, in fact, most projects require the same thing, but it's particularly important on the railroad side, is that there's a degree of training that needs to take place. And even though the contractor may satisfy the training requirements as part of the project, there are usually many, many more people who need to get trained before a system is put into use. The railroads are 24-hour operations. So you might train the day guy, but what about second and third shift? So all of that was able to take place between that minus 90 day and the actual substantial completion date, which, of course, for Moynihan coincided with the opening. So that ensured that the maximum number of staff from the railroad who were taking over those systems were fully capable of doing so. And had it been turned over all at the same time, they wouldn't have had enough time to get everyone trained, and would have put a little bit of stress on the railroad's ability to take over and operate those new systems. So among the many lessons learned, Chris, that one is certainly number one.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you, Chris, for joining us today. I have another question here from Kelvin Silva. So his question is, he would like to know about the role of networking in developing a successful engineering career.
Sure. Well, that's something that I'm going to go through in great detail as part of the program. And I think the only teaser that I'm going to give to the group today is that do not think that you can rely exclusively on the many social media platforms like LinkedIn and others to do the networking that is required for you to be successful in your career.
Thank you, Mike. There is one question about the session itself, if we have decided on the times and dates. So I believe we talked about, there's a few options we're talking about because we have an international audience. So we have thought about doing it on a Wednesday or a Thursday. Of course, we are still brainstorming the ideas. Mike, do we know if we are open to doing it on, I know that you mentioned you have an engagement previously with other projects. So should we be looking at Tuesdays or Thursdays or Wednesdays?
Right. So, just generally speaking, Mondays and Fridays are the best. Tuesdays is the next best. Then Wednesdays and Thursdays are really off the table through the end of the year.
Okay, perfect. So
maybe,
Daniel, we will let you know.
I was just going to say, maybe, Mike, if we could just give them, maybe the sessions are going to be once a week and they're going to be this many hours long. That might also be able to give them a good idea of whether they could commit the time to the series.
Yeah, so the my approach is patterned after what I did when I was delivering these live. This generally took place during the lunch hour. So folks were eating and learning, if you will, at the same time. And that has worked quite well. Frankly, being that we're in a virtual environment, I think limiting the session to an hour is appropriate. But of course, based on the needs of the group, I don't mind going over. I want to make sure that everyone is satisfied with the session content. But I'll get it into an hour for the group, and we will cover everything that that you need to hear within that module.
Thank you, Mike. Would there be additional reading materials or handouts for each session that we will be providing?
So I don't know about handout materials. I suppose the actual presentation, I'm fine with sharing that's perfectly fine. And what you will find as part of my presentation, and largely because it was something that was of great interest to those who have gone through it once before, is that I do identify books or other resources that I have found to be particularly helpful in my career. Make no mistake about it, folks. This is a multimedia approach, if you will, from presentations like this to reference material to a board of advisors. It all fits in together for your benefit. So yeah, I do have reference material on many of the topics that I've talked about today.
Thank you, Mike. And that actually, you reminded me of a question that I wanted to ask you about the board of advisors. The first time we talked about it, I thought, wow, that is an incredible, term for it, even though we all have some, a panel of folks that we reach out to for advice. I'm curious, when was the first time you had a board of advisors? And because you mentioned, you thanked your mentor in the beginning, I'm curious what made you come up with this board of advisors.
So, so when I got out of the Air Force and I moved back to New York, I went to work for the Port Authority. And coincidentally, there was another new employee who joined same time as I did. We were somewhat unique in that we came in kind of like middle manager level from the outside. And the Port Authority was always known for promoting from within, which is a great idea. And I think when you mix that with bringing people from the outside, it's even better. So anyway, we struck up a friendship, and it seemed like every time we got together, he had some really good advice when it comes to careers and the like. And we were just a couple of 30-year-olds, who were just starting off at a new assignment. That relationship stuck. He moved on. I moved on. Matter of fact, I moved on to a place that he recommended, and we've been in touch ever since. That was just one person. There have been others that followed, but that's really, I think, where it all started. And frankly, board of advisors, that's just a term. Like I say, many of us, have relationships with folks already. I'm just an advocate from, somewhat formalizing that, or for those of you who haven't done anything like that, to do something like that. His name is Tony Wu, by the way. Tony Wu. That's his name. Yep. He worked. He went on to lead the construction division at Battery Park City here in New York City. Great guy.
Thank you, Mike, for sharing that. And we are extremely glad to have you as part of our advisors at GBRI. And me personally am grateful for that. So
glad to be here, Jess.
Okay. There's one more question from Sarah. How do you structure a reverse mentoring session? I think reverse mentoring is another way through which generational gap can be bridged. Question from Sarah. I hope I structured it right. So her question is, how do you structure a reverse mentoring session?
So I'm going to have to get back to you on that.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, and what I'm going to do in that regard, because I don't feel well prepared to address that in the remaining time. So what I will do is I will make sure that I include that in the first session.
Yes.
Frankly, just to be honest, it's something I've struggled with a little bit. So let me get my ducks in a row, and it'll be part of the program.
Thanks, Mike. So I think, I think she mentioned reverse mentoring is another way of bridging the generational gap. I like the concept. I haven't heard that term before, but that the way she described it, it's very clear what it is now. I'm also going to look into it. So similarly, if you all have any other topics that you would like Mike to address, maybe you can enter them here and we can include it. Because I know when we were at ESET Access, Mike would ask us what are other things that we think are valuable, and if you think of anything else, you can share it here, and we can always address them in our training sessions.
Good, Jess. Thank you. I meant to say that, but you're absolutely right. I want to be responsive to the needs of the group. So, folks, please give me your suggestions, and we'll get them incorporated.
So with that, I think we don't have any more questions. Thank you again. Thank you, Mike, once again for joining us today and preparing this session. Though this was an intro session, I feel like this session itself was a lot of information about the structure, and I think we all learned a lot about the gaps. I myself felt like there were so many gaps, where I could use your expertise to bridge them. I'm looking forward to be part of it, and I hope many of us from GBRI can also be part of it, especially our team from India, the new interns. I hope they can all be part of the program. And I hope all of you who have joined today, you can also be part of the program. Thank you once again, Sarah, Chris, and everyone who asked questions, and so thank you for joining us. I hope you have the link now, and we hope to see you soon.